The fourth move I want to consider is c3, whereupon I recommend you capture in the center and then play our trademark idea, namely queen to b6. So as we are attacking on b2, white has tried three options, and I can't believe when I look at the database that b3 is by far the most popular choice. However, after this, black is completely winning. How? Well, we start with knight to c6 attacking on this pawn. This pawn can't move further as queen to a5 check, nab the sweetie. So accordingly, white has tried to defend this pawn either with knight to f3 or e3, and in both the case, black has this nice tactical shot. Can you see it? Just look at this. e5. What a move! Well, white has two choices. Number one, if we take back with the bishop, then we have this nice sequence. Bishop to b4 check, knight to d2. Now you pressurize this knight with knight to e4. So white has to defend with knight to f3. And finally, the sting in the tail, d6 wins the game on the spot, as wherever the bishop moves, our next move is bishop to g4, taking the f3 knight and then take on d2, something which white can see it, but unfortunately he cannot defend it. The most natural response here is d captures e5, but again this goes into the same direction, starting with bishop to b4 check, knight to d2, knight to e4, knight to f3, and this time we don't have the move d6, but we have even stronger move, namely, time and time this happened in this line, so remember, g5, our old good friend, help us to win the game. The point is, if white doesn't do anything, then g4 is coming up. So more or less, white has to take it. And after this, nope, you don't take the bishop, but you play this very strong deflecting move. Knight takes e5, so that we can take this knight and then munch on d2, something which is once again, white cannot prevent it. I recently win a very quick game where my opponent plays this blunder move a3, and what he missed is knight captures f3 is a check, and after pawn takes and bishop takes d2, probably he doesn't want to give up the queen, so he played king to e2 and give me the whole king. Well, that's kind of fun you can get once your opponent played the move b3. The second alternative here is queen to d2. But whenever this happens, I really like the black position because we always get tempo with knight to e4. And before we do this, I recommend you start with knight to c6, attacking this pawn, and when white defend it, now you play knight to e4. The point is, after queen to c2, counter-attacking the black knight, we have this nice move here, namely knight to b4, saying white, go ahead buddy, take the knight. The tactical point is, if white is foolish enough to take this knight, then after nice deflection move d5, and suddenly queen has to give access to this knight on the c2 as she has no way to hide. So nope, queen captures e4 is a bad move. The more accurate response here is queen to b3. But after this, once again black has this nice sequence. Queen to a5, looking for the discovery. So white has to block it. After this, we play this nice little cute move, e6, hence setting up yet another trap that if white takes on e4, then we have knight to c2, double discover check, and nabbing the rook in the corner. And apart from it, if white doesn't take it, the next plan is very obvious. We are looking at knight to d5 combining with bishop to b4, which, believe it or not, but gives black a completely winning advantage at just 10th move of the game. Let me show you how. There is a one high profile game in the database continue with knight to f3, whereupon black delivered the goods with ease. Knight to d5, attacking 3 times on the knight. Rook to c1. Now comes bishop to b4. And don't forget, this poor f4 bishop is also hanging. So in the game, white has to sadly retrieve the bishop to g3. But then the sequence is very obvious. Bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3, and after knight takes c3, look at the pathetic king. Even though there is a discovered check looming, sadly enough, this king cannot move anywhere. Well, in the game, white plays rook to c2, but after knight takes a2, discover check, knight to d2, and now knight to c3 back, whereupon black is not only a clear 2 healthy pawn up, but he has some ongoing pressure on this poor white king. Last but not least, what to do against the move queen to c2. Please remember guys, don't go for the queen captures d4 here, as queen captures c8 is actually a checkmate. So first you need to play knight to c6 attacking this pawn, and when white defend this, now I recommend you should play space gaining move with d5. The point is, when white continue with his favorable choice, knight to c3, we can deliver this surprising package. Can you see it? Yup, this typical deflection London move, bishop to f5, and I think after this, black is in really good shape. First of all, you can't take this bishop in the view of queen captures b2 with a good advantage to the black. So that is right out of the equation. The second move, queen to c1, is also very bad, as knight to b4 creates some huge problems in the white camp. So altogether here, white is forced to play queen to b3. But this is playing right into black's hand, as after queen exchange and the move a6, yup, we enter into the queenless middle game, where the structural weaknesses are clearly favors the black camp. White has tried 2 choices here. Number 1, in one of my blitz game, my opponent played knight to b5, taking the advantage of the pin, but I just calmly play rook to c8, and sadly enough, now white has to go back, which is already losing a tempo, as in the game, he played knight to c7, and after king to d8, I obtained 2 pieces for a rook, and in fact win the game. So nope, knight to b5 is a pretty bad choice by the white. The more natural response is knight to f3, trying to finish the development, whereupon black will do the same. First, rook to c8, stopping any piece intrusion. Bishop to e2. Now we play e6, and after white castles, well, the engine suggests you can play knight to h5 and black get a very good game. However, I insist on preserving my bishop, so h6 is the accurate choice. And from here, the game goes into the normal channel. For example, h3, bishop to e7, where black can castle on the king side. But the fact to remain on the table is, white has this loose double pawn, where in the upcoming endgame, our clear-cut target, and as confirmed by chess engine, black get a slightly superior position. Finally, we reach to the main move, e3. I am very delighted to share my own secret here, as if you look at the database, my move is not even in top 6 choices. And this will be a really shocker to your opponent, as it has been not analyzed in any books and videos. Are you ready? Just look at this. Knight to d5, a star move in the London Galaxy, where we have a very simple threat, nabbing this bishop, so all the game continues with bishop to g3. And now, yup, our consistent approach, queen to b6, attacking the weak b3 pawn. Well, white has the only move here, namely b3, as other moves completely fails. For example, if they go queen to c1, then black obtain a clear pawn advantage at just 6th move of the game. So that is right out of the equation. What about knight to c3? Well, your guess is equal as mine. You can chop on c3, give white a double pawn, and then continue with g6, which in fact sets up a very small trap that if white continue with his natural piece development such as knight to f3, then he can lose the game very quickly. And this happens in my game against a 2400 Lee chess player, where I continue with bishop to g7, and the big point is when white develop the bishop and ready to castle, black can deliver this nasty punch, queen to b2, and by force, white is losing the vital pawn. In fact, my opponent made it worse by playing bishop to e5, as I exchange the bishop and then kick this knight with d6, where unfortunately white lose more material after knight to f3, queen captures c3, knight to d2, and now the d pawn is also a goner, and at just 13th move, which opening gives you 2 pawn advantage from black. So to cut the long story short, the only move here is b3. And after this, first we exchange on d4 and then fianchet over bishop with g6. Please note, white can't play c4 here. The simple reason is this queen check is very strong, and there is a game in the database where white plays knight to d2, but after knight to c3, queen to c1, black has multiple choice including bishop to h6 as well as knight to e4. So c4 is a very premature move here. The more logical response is knight to f3, trying to finish the development, whereupon black deliver another surprising package, bishop to h6. So idea is this help us to land the knight on the f4 square, and accordingly, as per the database, white has 4 choices. Well, I really don't like the move c3 here. The simple reason is, after knight to f4, we are completely locking down this bishop, and if white wants to castle on the king side, then he has to give up the dark square bishop, which is a completely moral victory for the black. In one bullet game, my opponent tried queen to d2, thinking that he is getting my knight, but the problem is, after knight captures g2, actually black who is getting the white queen. The second choice, bishop to c4, oftenly considered here, but I think again this is a kind of inaccuracy by white, where black can deliver the goods with queen check. The point is, after knight to d2, we can jump in with knight to c3, and after queen to c1, we can liberate all our piece with knight to c6, castle, and now d5, force the bishop go to the d3 square, and what else but yet another London deflection move. You got it, bishop to f5, as this bishop cannot move simply because of this juicy fork. To demonstrate how good this position is for the black, let's see a grandmaster game where white continue with rook to e1, defending the fork. Black plays the obvious move, bishop takes, doubling the white pawn, and then continue with castle on the king side. And when white plays the move queen to b2, knight to b5 deliver the decisive punch. The d4 pawn is hanging, and in the game white tried the tactical move a4, which doesn't work out, as after knight takes d4, knight takes d4, black plays bishop to d2, and this more or less by force win the game. How? Well, let's see a forcing continuation from here. Knight takes c6, attacking the queen. Pawn takes c6, and when white saves the rook, the sting in the tail, bishop to c3, wins the exchange and in fact the game. Last but not least, whether your opponent continue with bishop to e2 or bishop to d3, they both goes into the same direction. Let's say bishop to e2, planning to castle king side. And this is exactly the moment where black deliver this check. If king to f1, then the rook in the corner become extremely unhappy. So the forced response is knight to d2. And after this, you know what to do. Yup, knight to c3, attacking the queen. Queen to c1. And here I don't like to capture this bishop. Instead, black should continue with his piece development, knight to c6. Stopping white to castle, so white has to first save the bishop, whereupon we deliver another nice tactical move, knight to b4. So there is a cat and mouse phenomena going on, where white still cannot castle in the view of knight takes d3, pawn takes d3, and bye-bye white queen. So that means castle is right out of the equation once black plays knight to b4. And accordingly, the only logical reply here is a3, getting rid of this knight, but black is more than happy as white get this double pawn. And when we play d6, our last piece get liberated so that the rook can come on the c file. Well, there are no games in the database from this position. So let's see the base continuation from the white. b4, attacking the queen, queen to c7, and white can play rook to c2, trying to get the knight. So black knight has to move. And after the queen exchange, when white castle on the king side, I propose this nice move, bishop to g4, and I think after this, even though we have equal material, black is completely winning. For example, h3, bishop takes f3, knight takes f3, and rook to c8. Now you see the important point of our bishop. White would love to challenge the c-file, but in fact, he cannot. Okay, knight to h2, trying for the knight g4. Well, we can simply stop it. And if white block our bishop with f4, ready to play rook to c1, we have a very nice move here, knight to d5. And after this, just look at the pathetic placement of all white pieces. There is already ongoing pressure on f4, rook to c3 is coming in the mix. And to your surprise, if you put this position in any chess engine, it says it's completely winning for the black. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoy and learn this high profile tricky line against the London system. I am sure after watching this video, you are as confident as me to bust the London nuts. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment. and I will see you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.